Today's episode to be reviewed, Future Imperfect, another episode where most of the show takes place in an alternate reality, which means it will be hard to take points away because it didn't really exist. But we can still point out the red flags that Riker missed instead. This episode starts with Riker's birthday and Geordi performing Picard maneuver number 1. You learn Riker's not an expert on the trombone, and look, they serve blue bantha milk on the Enterprise. Worf refuses to eat the cake. After all, Worf only eats cellular peptide cake.
With mint frosting.
Geordi performs Picard maneuver number 2. Everybody yells, woo! The first point is lost, since Data already knows about birthdays, and androids are not into small talk. This is the second and final time you see Gleason. He was on the battle bridge in The Best of Both Worlds. Another point lost for asking the birthday boy to go on an away mission. The ship has a crew of 1,000. Someone else could have gone, like Data standing right next to him. Another point lost for Wesley not being in the show. He's leaving soon. It's like he's already left. Another point lost for not beaming a probe down into the caverns first. Happy birthday. What an asshole. He could have sent somebody else. Considering there's all this gas, 1 point lost for not beaming down with protective suits. Picard says, now that you've beamed down, come back up. This was a stupid idea. The narrator is right. I should have sent a probe. Geordi says, that's good advice. Let's go back to the party. This is the first appearance of Nurse Ogawa. Of course, the director has her stand in front of the mirror so Riker can't see himself. The first red flag, of course, are mirrors over a patient's bed. The last thing a sick person wants to do is see himself. Another point lost for opening credits 6 minutes into the show. Carolyn McCormick's name is a hint to the audience that something isn't quite right. The biggest red flag, of course, is that most of the crew is still on the ship. All of them are senior officers who have been in nearly 15 years. In 16 years, they would have scattered all over Starfleet or even retired. Of course, the alien Barat needs that much time to pass so Riker can have a son. This comment is foreshadowing since Riker played the trombone at a jazz club when he met Minuet. Beverly says Geordi appears to have been immune, and Klingons don't seem to be affected by the virus. Doesn't that mean immune also? The slow computer is another red flag. This is probably LeVar Burton's favorite episode because he didn't have to wear that visor or the blind contacts. Look close, there is a model of the Romulan warbird on the counter. The Admiral performs the Picard maneuver, another red flag. While he was unconscious and delirious, they would have gotten a new mediator. Another red flag, since he's the only one that believes this. This is Picard maneuver number 4. How does he not see this? This kid is named after his real father. That was an alternate storyline the alien Barat had programmed in case this one went wrong. This is Picard maneuver number 5, so it's time for a drink. In the alternate storyline, Jean-Luc is the father and the first baseman is the mother. Another red flag, the ship's counselor should not be the captain's wife, because she knows the dirt on everybody. Now, we all know how embouchure is spelled. Another red flag, a statue of a naked woman and a Horgon in a house with a 10-year-old. Minuet would have thrown them out. If Riker was standing 1 foot to the right, that wouldn't look good at all. This is the first red flag that Riker sees. The next red flag is, every time he catches on, something happens to distract him. Another red flag is a Starfleet kid in normal clothes. This extra's walking really funny. They must have told her to try to march. Picard wants to know how his son is doing in case the holodeck has to switch to that timeline. Another point lost, since this storyline follows a Star Trek novel where Kirk is kidnapped and told by Klingons that he brokered a peace in the future. And they were looking for a secret outpost as well. The next red flag is that a Romulan knows about Riker's virus. That would not be public information. The next red flag is a Romulan on the bridge. They would have taken him to a conference room. 1 point lost for a visible boom mic in the reflection. Riker is off the bridge at this time. He wouldn't see this happen because it's a hologram, so -1 point. Riker notices something isn't right, and instantly he gets a call from sickbay. This happened in Matrix Resurrections too. Beverly gives Will lessons on being a single parent. Riker tries his first cheesy dad line. Now for the father-son bonding moment, and Riker's thinking, who is this guy? Even in a fake reality and extra crosses when they come out of the turbolift. That's odd. A Star Trek father and son go holodeck fishing. Where have I heard that before? Then he says, "Hey Dad, could you tell me what that Horgon is all about in the living room?" Riker says, "You bet." Now he wants to see Riker, Mrs. William T. This isn't a computer glitch this time. The computer says, "I am a woke liberal computer and I am offended. There is no way your wife's name is Mrs. William T. Riker. This isn't the 1950s anymore." Here was a quick cameo of the beautiful Minuet. Now it all sinks in. He's thinking, Minuet, of course, that's why my son's name is John Luke, because they did the nasty when I wasn't looking, and all this time I thought she was a hologram. Again, another distraction when he senses something's wrong, but this time he's on to him. Little Jean-Luc says it's the second baseman that's wrong. Geordi says it's the second baseman that's the problem. Riker says, no, it's the left fielder. Geordi really gets ripped to shreds here, but LeVar Burton is only thinking, shit, I'll have to put that visor back on in a few minutes. Worf can't remember where he got the scar. However, it could be possible that Data could program himself to use contractions after 16 years. Then he says, Admiral, shut up. I know what you did with Minuet. I know you're Jean-Luc's real father. Riker manages to tell off everybody before the program ends. Look closely, there is a little Romulan in the window up above Riker's head. Now for a long-winded conversation between Riker and Tomalak. Riker admits having the hots for an AI-generated fantasy. This would have been an interesting episode that predicts the future of AI fantasy characters, but they don't really go in that direction, so we will never know what Minuet did with Picard. The first red flag of the second scenario, if the scanners were so good, why couldn't they find out where Outpost 23 was? Star Trek uses the same tunnel like the cheap bastards that they are. Riker meets the kid again and says, your name is what? The second baseman. You are the problem. You are wrong. Another red flag. Riker would have known about the planet Meridian. Now for a good father and not really his son fight scene. Riker does a weird kick. Look closely, that's a plastic map. Now it's made out of paper, so -1 point. Ethan wants to go on a shuttlecraft holo voyage, but Riker's experience says calling for help would be better. Riker's seeing the red flags much more clearly now. And hey, he said ambassador and not commander. Riker's like, the first baseman is Ambassador Tomalak? Riker sings his favorite Who song. They all love this song. As if on cue, another distraction, and Riker is done. Riker then says, you know, the narrator is right. There is always some type of distraction whenever I'm onto something, like we're on a holodeck. And the holograms disappear. Aww. Then once the projectors turn off, his signal appears again. 1 point lost for not beaming down a search party in protective suits. Riker wants to know if Geordi and Worf are alright.
We beamed them up an hour ago. They're fine. But we lost you in mid-transport.
So he was only down there for an hour. I got the impression nearly a day had passed, so -1 point. You never learn who the two races were, or how long he's really been there, or if the gases were also holo projections, or how he got food, or where his mom got the projectors. And Barat really doesn't know if it's safe to call for help to leave the planet, but he is tired of being left alone. Riker says, is your name really Ethan or Jean-Luc, or are you the left fielder? Riker invites him to go up to the Enterprise with him, and then we learn that his name is Barash, even though I've been calling him Barat the whole time. They beam up to the Enterprise and live happily ever after. How icky. This is the second and final appearance of the beautiful Carolyn McCormick. However, her 60 screen credits include Law & Order and Spencer for Hire, and plenty of stage plays. George O'Hanlon Jr. was on Battleship and Jake and the Fat Man. His father was the voice of George Jetson. This is the second of 5 appearances of April Grace. Todd Merrill was on Jag and Quantum Leap. This is the first appearance of Patty Yasutaki. She'll be on 15 more times and 2 of the movies. Andreas Kasoulas was big in the theater world. Tomalak will be back 1 more time, then off to Babylon 5 and Enterprise. And Chris Dimitrol has 40 screen credits, including Mr. Belvedere, Dallas, and The Secret Adventures of Jules Verne. Future Imperfect, another alternate reality show where they barely touch on people falling in love with AI characters, gets a score of 88. Yes! Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I'll see you again next week.